Hello, Davison. Superintendent Kevin Brown coming to you with another edition of Brown's Blog. I wanted to spend some time today talking a little bit about some of the comments that I've heard, some of the things that are being said by those who are not necessarily supportive of our March 2020 bond. One of the things that I've heard is that $71 million is just too much money. And that people just don't feel like they can support a bond of that magnitude. I just want to make sure that everybody understands where that number came from. When we first started this process in the spring of last year, one of the first things that we did after the board decided to go after a bond was to have an educational assessment done. An educational assessment is where a team of architects, engineers, and builders actually come into your district and go through all of your facilities. And they identify those critical needs, those things that are really in need of repair or replacement. The result of that was over $100 million in work that needed to be done in the district. We then spent a considerable amount of time trying to pare down that list by eliminating things that weren't real high dollar ticket items or things that maybe weren't as high a priority as other things. We got it down to $71.3 million, and at that point we really couldn't cut anything else. Everything was that needed to be done was high on the priority list. And so that's how we settled on that figure. We've also tried to identify those things that our public said that they would support. Things from the areas of safety and security, instructional technology, or renovations here at Davison High School. In fact, renovations at Davison High School was the #1 thing identified in a survey that we did last year of our stakeholders when we asked two basic questions. #1 is, would you support a facilities bond? Overwhelmingly, the response we got was yes. It was over 90% approval. And the #1 item on that survey that people wanted to see done or addressed was Davison High School. People recognized the building was old, it was aging, and its facilities needed some serious work. Once we had all of that done, then we start looking at another comment that is out there, and that is, if the district had managed their funds better or done a better job of maintaining their facilities, they wouldn't need so much money. I actually think quite the opposite is true. One of the things that I've said repeatedly is that Davison High School is 50 years old. It hasn't really had any major renovations or upgrades during that entire time. I think the fact that we are maintaining 50-year-old boilers and maintaining a facility that's that old is a testament that we have done things well. The other thing you have to understand is that we have about $1 million a year in our sinking fund that we've used to do a lot of upgrades throughout the entire district. For instance, you may have noticed that we've upgraded the parent drop-off and pickup loop at Gates Elementary. That was a high-dollar project that we did a couple of years ago. This past year, we spent about $700,000 replacing the roof at Hahn Intermediate. Hahn is our newest building. It's only 22 years old, but the roof was failing and the repair had to be done. So when we have those big ticket items like that cost a significant amount of money, it chews up that sinking fund pretty fast. I think it's also important to talk a little bit about school funding, because the reality is all public schools in the state of Michigan have been underfunded for a long time. We simply don't get the funds that we need to keep up with inflation and the increasing costs of doing business. Recently, there was a study done by Dr. David Arson, one of about 5 different studies in the last several years, that reached the same conclusion as the other 4, that Michigan schools have been significantly underfunded for about the last 20 years. In fact, Dr. Arson concluded with his research that Michigan ranked dead last in growth, in funding growth from 2008 to 2018. And at the time he completed the study in 2018, he also showed that we were still being funded in 2018 at 2008 levels. So while costs for doing business, maintaining our facilities and things like that continued to increase, our funding remained relatively flat. So there are a lot of reasons why we're in the position that we are today, and that we're asking for this much money. The one thing that I also want to point out is that had I been coming to the public last year at this time asking for our community to pass a bond, at that time we probably could have got about $61 million for a bond, and it would have cost the taxpayers 3.1 mils. Because the economy has turned around and the interest rates are so low, today we can get $71 million for 2.9 mils. So the time is right. I mean, at no time in my memory have we had the opportunity to get as much bang for our buck as we do right now. And so the old saying, strike while the iron's hot, I think is very true. And that's why you see so many school districts that are going after bonds. Recently, Flushing just completed a major renovation. They built a big field house as part of a $20 million bond they passed in 2017. Swartz Creek is building a new football stadium with synthetic athletic turf, and they built a brand new performing arts center in a nearly $50 million bond that they passed in 2018. Lakeville just passed a small bond in 2019. There are 3 districts right now that are going for renewals. Grand Blanc is looking to renew $87 million in their renewal election. Atherton is also going for a renewal. And the Flint Community Schools is going for a renewal as well. In addition to that, there are other districts that are going for new millages. They're also trying to pass bonds. Goodrich is one. Davison is, of course, one. And Clio is also going for about a $40 million bond as well. So there's obviously a reason that so many school districts, not only in Genesee County but throughout the state, are going after bonds. And it's because we've been underfunded for a very long time. The economy has been down, and so nobody felt comfortable going to the community and asking for a bond when the economy was struggling. Now that things are turning around, you're seeing schools trying to take care of some of the needs that they have. We've also heard comments about the new auditorium, that Davison doesn't need a fancy new auditorium. And I would respectfully disagree. The auditorium, like the rest of the high school, is 50 years old. It hasn't really had any major upgrades or improvements during that entire time. The sound system is not in good shape. The riggings and things like that are not in good shape. The lighting system. And the other thing that I want to point out is when we did our preliminary survey a year ago, a new auditorium at Davison High School was number 4 on the priority list. Number 1 was renovations at Davison High School. Number 2 was safety and security upgrades, such as our secure entry vestibules that we want to put into our buildings. And number 3 was, of course, instructional technology. The number 4 thing that people said they would be willing to support was a new auditorium at Davison High School. You'll recall we also held 3 community forums in the fall. And out of those 3 community forums, where we had numerous people from the public attending and giving us input and engaging in dialogue about the bond, almost everybody was supportive of a new auditorium. And that's why we moved forward with including that in our bond. I think a new auditorium, quite honestly, is a critical need. If we're going to redo the high school and address our other critical needs, now is the time to do that as well. And then the final thing that I'd like to address is synthetic turf at the football field. For whatever reason, synthetic turf seems to be a hot button issue. And I've actually heard people say that they will not support a bond that has turf for the stadium included. I find that somewhat perplexing, to be honest with you. The cost of synthetic turf, by our estimates, is less than $700,000, less than 1% of the overall bond. It would save us thousands of dollars a year annually in maintenance costs. When you think about it, think about the cost that it takes to maintain a grass field. We have to add sand to the field annually to maintain the crown. We have to add grass seed. We have to water the field. We have to cut the grass. We have to paint it. There's a lot of cost that goes into maintaining a natural turf field. Not only would a synthetic turf field save us money annually in maintenance costs, but it would also make that field usable by so many different groups. Right now, the field is only used by the high school football teams because we have to keep it in reasonable condition. In fact, this year, our state championship football team on the way to Ford Field had to play a home game at Brandon High School because our field was frozen solid and was not suitable. It would have been dangerous to allow kids to play there. So we went to Brandon and played a home football game at their field because they had synthetic field turf. But a synthetic turf field would be available to other groups as well. Middle school football, youth football, lacrosse, our marching band, even golfers could go out there in inclement weather and hit off the turf. So there are a lot of benefits to having artificial field turf in the stadium. So I hope that today I've helped to address some of the concerns that you may have heard, that I've been hearing in the community. And I'd just like to close with this. A couple weeks ago, I was at Ballard Village and I was talking to a group of senior citizens. And one of the ladies in the audience made this comment. She said, "You know, Mr. Brown, my kids have grown, they've moved away, I no longer have children in the schools, but I'm going to vote yes on this bond because to me, it's an investment in our children, in the school, and in the Davison community." I couldn't agree more, and I just wanted to share that with you. So, before I end this blog, I want to wish good luck to our wrestling team who's going to compete for a state championship this weekend on Saturday. Go Cards, and remember to vote March 10. Thank you.